or good evening, wherever you are in the world, whenever you are seeing this. Um, I want to welcome you to this webinar. My name is Nelson. I've been working in the industry for, well, many years, more than 20 at this point. I'm not going to spend a lot of time introducing myself. I'm sure by name you can check my LinkedIn, and I'm eager to just jump into the contents of today. So, today I wanted to change the discussion a little bit. I wanted to make it a bit more human, a bit more, bring it home to the human nature that happens when, we decide to either start a career in cybersecurity or when or somebody decides to, okay, I want to learn something else, because I'm sure everybody agrees there's so much to learn. There's so much areas, so many topics, so many things. And I often hear or read comments of people online stating that they feel a bit overwhelmed. I don't know exactly where to start in cybersecurity. I'm not sure what role to choose. I'm not sure what to do. I'm a bit frightened because it's so overwhelming. Okay. So when I was invited to do this webinar, I was like, okay, let's address that head on. Because people that do those comments, they're not necessarily wrong. And I'm definitely not here to tell you what to choose and which way to go and what road to follow. I am here, however, to share a bit of a positive perspective, like what I find to be a valuable mindset to have, on an industry that can appear to be quite difficult, quite big, not just to jump into, but also to kind of grow in and navigate. But okay, before I give you that perspective and before I give you those thoughts and those tools that you can use, and tools that you can apply immediately in whatever you do in cybersecurity or on anything you want to do, actually, but we're talking about cybersecurity today. I want to start this by being brutally honest. Cybersecurity is hard. So there's no dispute there, I believe, right? It is not just hard like memorizing things hard. I'm talking about hard like it messes with your sleep cycle hard. It's complex. It's fast-paced, mentally exhausting hard. It's you fix one problem, and a new one appears hard. You blink and a new threat actor appears hard. It's the kind of hard that asks for 3 years on an entry job and wants you to be a wizard in scripting from the get-go hard. So, and why is it hard, by the way? It's hard because, of course, technical complexity. You have a lot of tools, a lot of systems. It's relentlessly changing. Threats evolve faster than you can actually maybe even document them. And it's high stakes. So if any slip can cost a lot of money, and very often in the millions. And my personal favorite, sometimes you're pressured to, specialize in an area, but at the same time, you're pressured to generalize in an area, which is a very interesting scenario. You're expected to think like a hacker and act like an engineer and speak like a lawyer and behave like a diplomat. So it is not necessarily easy, and that was when I was researching for this webinar. I was like, okay, let me go exactly to the pain points, and I do recognize them, and I just listed them. And of course, because I'm talking about human nature, let's not forget our very good old friend, the imposter syndrome. um, it's an invisible challenge. We don't necessarily share it. It's that feeling that you don't belong, or it's that feeling that everyone else and everything is ahead of you and you cannot catch up, or that at some point you'll be found out that you don't know this little detail, or that that discomfort that comes with all of that. This is incredibly common in tech, by the way, not just in cybersecurity, but in IT in general. It's I personally have had it, and I can tell you that many colleagues of mine also have it. So long story short, cybersecurity is not just difficult. It's designed to challenge you constantly. But here's the twist. consider all that, but let's consider something even more important. This is not a talk about, trying to make you the smartest. I'm not trying, literally, I'm really not trying to tell you that, you cannot succeed if your like IQ is not 150. I want to change the narrative here, and that's why I have this twist to give you. I've seen more often than not, and not just in cybersecurity, but again, we're talking about cyber, that those who succeed are not necessarily those that are the most intelligent or the most or the smartest. They're just the most consistent. So they practice, they refine, they repeat, they make mistakes, they stand up, dust off, keep going over and over. They do it again and again. So today we're talking about that exact formula. And what is that formula? I love this sentence, by the way. The formula is: repetition is the mother of skill, consistency is the father of confidence. Okay, let's look at this, and we're going to spend the whole webinar just like focusing on what this means, and we're going to deconstruct all of this. But before we go into a lot of detail here, by the way, this is from Tony Robbins. This is not my sentence, and I've heard it being said by another gentleman called Tim Ron, I think, or Jim Ron. Also, both of them Americans. And we're going to go into detail into, let's deconstruct all this. But, I'm going to ask you a bold question, like a very important question here. If you ever studied cybersecurity, anything in that field, right? And if you had a hard time, what if I told you that it's not lack of knowledge that was holding you back, or lack of awareness that was holding you back? It was not intelligence, not even talent, by the way, and I have a nice slide to come soon. It was not even luck. It was lack of repetition. So repetition is the key word here. And this idea, I love this idea. Why do I love this idea? Because this completely changes the narrative. It flips the script. You don't need to be a genius. You don't necessarily need to have that IQ of 160. You don't need to know everything, right? Which is one of the biggest sources of imposter syndrome. You just need to build habits, daily repetitions, micro commitments, small daily actions, you name it, but small and often. Think of cybersecurity like going to the gym, right? If you pick up the weight and you do one, you're not going to gain muscle, right? But if you keep showing up consistently, even if you have the lightest weight, you can actually build muscle. What does this mean in technology terms, right? Like in our field? Well, in practice, if the more you look at, for example, logs, and you analyze them, the more they become second nature to you. And at some point it becomes intuitive. Not at first, but it will eventually become easier for you. You write one document, one standard, or one policy. And at some point you will become much more proficient at it. It's not, the first time will be harder, of course, and so on and so forth. Like if you do one phishing simulation, you'll have one perspective about it. But if you do it 50 times, at some point you almost can predict user behavior, and so on and so forth. So repetition is the key word here. And I really want to bring this home. I really want you guys to understand what I'm talking about. So let's look at two of the greatest athletes, two of the greatest football players of all time. I'm sure you all know these. So it's Ronaldo on the left and Messi on the right. Why am I bringing this up? Also because the talent word that I said a few slides ago. Like I just want to skim through the story of these two. So Ronaldo was, as I'm sure you know, not necessarily considered to have been born with a lot of talent, but his dedication to repetition and training and the discipline and the diets and was just unreal. And Messi is considered to be one of the like natural flavored players because of his kind of natural talent. Um, but even Messi played a lot of football. He kept repeating that. He kept repeating the passes, the drills, practicing goals, apparently from the age of 5. So one you can say Ronaldo, you can say it's the product of repetition and discipline, and the other is the repetition and talent. But both have repetition. It's the same. They have different starts, but it's the same process. It's relentless improvement. It's complete, almost brutal consistency over the years and years and years. And trust me, you can be a fan of Ronaldo, you can be a fan of Messi, for whatever are your reasons, and I respect them. But we need to agree that they both play at a level which is very, very high, regardless of where they started. And I think repetition is the key word here, because it doesn't matter. I mean, if they've been playing football since the age of 5 every day, it's almost natural that they are extremely, extremely good. Okay. But let's look at the quote that anchors this whole talk, and let's just deconstruct it a little bit. So this isn't just a motivational sentence, which it is, but it's not just that. This is field-tested truth. This is observed fact, in other words. But it's very easy to lose the perspective, right? So my job today is to really bring home this perspective. So, okay, listen, in cybersecurity, we're constantly, more often than not, thrown into chaos. We have new frameworks, we have new threat models, we have new vulnerabilities. But when you repeat basic, essential tasks, your brain starts to connect patterns. You start seeing patterns. You start to be more masterful of what it is that you do. And I think the key here is indeed just that consistency, that showing up every day, making sure that you have a consistent routine for this. Because when you start doing this consistently, your self-doubt quiets down, and that's confidence being built, one repetition at a time. So let's look a bit deeper into this, because the key words are these keywords here. So repetition builds skill. By the way, skill is one specific task. And consistency builds confidence. Skill is what you do. Confidence is how you feel when you do it, and when you know that you can do it well. And both are earned. Both are a fruit of labor. Both are a fruit of action. We're going to talk about it in a bit. They're not inherited. It's repetition that brings them about. So, for example, in cybersecurity, you don't magically become good at incident response, right? You repeat detection drills. You get familiar with your detection software. You also don't magically feel confident, handing out a report. No, you consistently write and deliver report insights. You collect feedback. You learn from errors or previous mistakes. And you also are not immediately magically confident when you're doing an audit, or even when you're receiving it, by the way. You repeatedly go through it. And the more you are either giving an audit or receiving an audit, the more comfortable you are on it, the more you can predict how it's going to be, the more you can prepare, or the better you can prepare for it. So people who seem fluent in cybersecurity, they've just done it more often. So that the time factor here, it's quite important. They've done it again and again for a longer period of time. Okay. So repetition builds skill, and that consistency will bring you confidence. How does this relate to your career journey if you're starting or if you want to move somewhere else in cybersecurity, let's have a look into the career aspect of this. Okay, so typical paths, and by no means this is a very generic way of looking at this. I've seen it in many ways, but like if you have an entry level um, job, maybe you're just a security operations center analyst, or maybe you're just providing IT support, call center. Maybe you're just a security admin, configuring systems, right? So maybe entry level jobs. Intermediate jobs would look like, you're now a security engineer, penetration tester, threat hunter, something like that, right? And then you have more advanced roles such as architects, red team leads, GRC specialists, etc. And at some point, you have like the executive level, like the strategic level roles, like CISO, privacy officers, security directors, you name it. The point is that each of these stages, so entry level, intermediary, etc., this is not a jump that you do. It's really not a jump. It's just a series of repeated efforts. It's repetition. Think of it like as a computer game. You're leveling up. You don't unlock the next stage by accident. You work on it. You grind. You do projects. You do lab experiments. You go through incidents. You implement frameworks. Every small repetition levels you up that little bit. Um, and yeah, the I have a slide next which has to do with career possibilities in cybersecurity. This was one of the simplest ones because it's so much that you can do. This is just a symbolic representation. I'm sure there's more. This is not my image, by the way. I brought this from the internet, and I can share this after if you want. What I like about this is kind of gives you a kind of staged, a phased out kind of career progress. And feel free to pause this or to take a print screen of this if you want. This just gives you an overview, right? Now, I've seen uh, people go from one to the other. Like this is not necessarily you go from A to B to C. This is just to give you more or less the complexity, because the higher the stage, the higher the responsibility that you have. Okay. But there's two main aspects to to cybersecurity careers that I think are important to just take a quick look at, and these are operational roles versus strategic roles. So operational. Okay, so these are the warriors on the ground. This is the people in the field. These are the uh, people that the SOC analysts, the people in the security operations center, the red teamers, the threat hunters. They're usually they usually have logs all over them. They have alerts, exploits, and a lot of coffee. Then you have strategic roles. Strategic roles are more those of GRC leads, CISOs, compliance officers, etc. So look at it this way: one one fights fires, one puts the fires down, another builds fire stations. So those would be operational versus strategic, right? One ensures the train is moving, so to speak. The other one plans the expansion of the railway network. So strategic versus operational. Usually strategic is usually, and I can go back to the previous slide, it's usually like higher level roles. And you can see on stage 5 that you have that governance part there. Those are usually quite strategic. Honestly, my recommendation to you is be exposed to that already. Try to understand how these strategic cybersecurity people that you have around you, how they think and how they operate, so that you can already learn, because it's very, very interesting, very, very important that you do as much of both as you possibly can. Of course, usually you start on operations and then you kind of graduate forward. But here's the kicker. Here's again, the important element that kind of pervades this whole topic, which is what? Both of these being operational or strategic roles, both demand the same superpower: repetition. Because skills are not absorbed, right? Like they're developed. You develop a skill, you keep building up. You do a technical role, and you do a strategic role, but both of them demand progress, like deliberate, thought out effort, repetition again. Okay, so I want to move forward and I want to kind of deconstruct exactly what's happening when you do these things. So when you repeat something, this is the logic behind it. When you repeat something very often, you become familiar with it. It's not something strange to you, right? So and once you're familiar with something, the more familiar you are with something, the more fluent you are with that something, right? So the definition of fluent, by the way, just to make it very easy, fluent describes the ability to one to express himself very easily without effort. So when you're fluent in something, you have no effort in doing that something. So that familiarity, when it builds up and graduates, it graduates into fluency on a topic, like a language, for example. You're only fluent in a language after you've repeatedly learned something, you're very familiar with it, and then you become fluent. And once you become fluent, you're confident in talking that language, right? Or if you're a musician, by the way, which is my case, sometimes you practice the instrument so much that you have no choice. Like it's just a natural law that you become very, very fluent in what you practice. And how does this look like in cybersecurity, by the way? So have you opened Wireshark a few times? It can be quite intimidating. Open it 100 times. You almost start predicting the packages and packet patterns that are flowing around, right? Have you done a risk assessment? Might be a little daunting and overwhelming. Well, the more you do it, the more second nature it becomes. So again, repetition is the engine. But if repetition is the engine, what is the fuel? Action. It's not about talent. It's not about intelligence. It's about doing. It's about action. And that action consistently done will elevate you to that level that we've been talking about. Okay. I actually have some examples that I want to go through. So, for example, if you are in cybersecurity and you are doing regular software updates, right? That's an action. It's a skill that you can actually acquire and that you can actually consistently do. The more you do it, the better you are at consistently updating software to patch vulnerabilities. At some point, you might even be starting to think in automating that, which you should definitely. Security audits, for example, you do one audit. Of course, like I said before, it might be a bit daunting. Yeah, imposter syndrome might kick in, but the more audits you perform and receive, whichever way, the more you do it, the easier it becomes to identify security gaps, and the easier it becomes for you to actually be talking to an auditor. And things like that, continuous monitoring. If you are used to, if you look at the network for the first time and you see how things are going, you might be overwhelmed. But the more you do it, the more familiar you are with it, the more fluent you become, and therefore the more competent and confident you become. So it's about action. It's absolutely about action. It's what you do that matters. And I put a slide here again just to talk about music. Being a musician since 1996 myself, there's a word that I want to bring to your attention. Have you ever heard the word rehearsal? Rehearsal is just another word for repetition. They practice again. They keep at it. Sometimes they play the same song more than 200 times. What is the end result? They become absolutely proficient in it. They become competent. They become confident. They know exactly what to do. And you can copy paste that to cybersecurity again. So, on any field, you can absolutely use that repetition to become better at something and become confident at something. And yeah, I have a sentence here that says, treat cybersecurity like an instrument. Repeat it until you are fluent in it. Because you don't memorize ISO, the first time you read it. You don't memorize NIST frameworks or SOX overnight. It takes time. And you learn how. How do you develop this knowledge? By drafting policies about these frameworks, for example, or reviewing them, or presenting documentation which is adapted to your specific network or organization, by making mistakes implementing the controls, or not by doing them correctly, by explaining the subject to somebody else. So all of these little repetitions graduate you, kind of level you up into a point where you really can perform. And I know that cybersecurity, again, it can be quite daunting. There's a lot to learn, but if you do that repetition, you can get there, because the more you repeat something, the more certainty you have on that subject. Therefore, that builds your confidence, because you're absolutely stable in what you know, because you know that you know. All right, let's apply this stuff in a way that you can, use immediately. So this is the blueprint that I want you to have. Choose a skill or more, but I don't want to be too ambitious, so I'm being a bit conservative here. Just choose one skill, something that you've been wanting to learn, and you haven't had that push. Well, this is your push. Choose that skill. Something that interests you would be better. And by the way, this is valid for people starting or veterans. Like, there's this something that I've been in governance a lot. I'm not sure I should try out penetration testing and red teaming. Do it. Start somewhere. Maybe on this specific case, you might need to first understand Linux, and then you understand the languages required for this kind of exercise, red teaming, in other words. But start somewhere, start small, and repeat. It will get you there. So choose one skill, break it down. Like I said, we were talking about red teaming. See what is needed. See the skills that you require to understand and know, so that you can act. By the way, and this is my personal perspective on this, you really only know something if you can apply it, if you can do it. So that's your kind of test. If you cannot do it, then there's still something missing, and you should go back to the drawing board and see what's missing, because it's the action that matters. It's you doing it that will elevate you and level you up. So choose a skill, break it down into small steps. Small is good. Small is possible, and it's not overwhelming. So do small actions on small parts of the bigger picture that you want to go. Schedule 15 minutes a day. 15 minutes, 10 minutes. You can do more, of course, but like for example, when I study, usually I do it during my commute. So I'm on the train, I'm with headsets, and I'm studying some subject. And that routine actually has allowed me to, well, learn quite a lot in a time that otherwise would be kind of dead weight, right? You don't necessarily use commuting time for nothing special. So schedule 15 minutes or 10 and make it work for you. Just read something. Make sure that you go through something, 15 minutes, and then the next day you do the same. This is optional, but I would still recommend that you do it just for visibility. Track your progress. Make a graph. Today I studied 15. Tomorrow, you do 20. The next day you do 20 again. Oh, the other day I didn't have as much time, so the minimum is always 15. But you keep track of how much you've been producing, and that's really important because it will keep your morale up. And even more optional, share that on your social media. Why not? Tell your friends what you've been studying. This topic can be daunting, can be quite frightening. It's so much stuff that you need to think about. So sometimes just you putting something on your social media might inspire somebody to also take action. So choose a skill, break it down, schedule 15 minutes, track your progress, share it with your social networks if you want. Simple, sustainable, scalable. All right. Let's talk about also a little bit of the imposter syndrome. Let's address that, because sometimes it just kicks in. And I want to address that by telling you that sometimes the imposter syndrome comes from you thinking, or people thinking, that they're falling behind. You know, the industry moves fast. It's easy to feel like that, but you're not behind. You're becoming. What do I mean by this? Let's break it down. You're becoming better. You're becoming more experienced, more skilled. You're becoming more competent. You're becoming more consistent. You're becoming a more mature professional. And this mindset is one of the best ways to deal with imposter syndrome. How do you beat it? Well, I'm not going to maybe dive too much into this psychological aspect of it, but I can tell you that the way not to deal with it is not to try to feel more talented that you are, or you know, it's not even collecting credentials. Because I know a lot of people that have credentials and they still tell me that they have that imposter syndrome. And it's not by beefing up your LinkedIn. You beat that bloody imposter syndrome by repetition. Because when you repeat something enough, it becomes familiar. When it becomes familiar to you, you become fluent in it. And when it's fluent to you, then you become confident in it. And it's that confidence that immediately pushes back that imposter syndrome. Okay. Oh, I need to tell you this. So, guys, every CISO has Googled how to explain ransomware to a board of directors. Every CISO, every GRC lead, um, I'm sure that at least once they've panicked because of some ISO 27001 clause. I'm sure every SOC analyst once missed an alert. Every incident responder, I'm sure at least once they ran a tabletop that completely went sideways. Tabletop is a type of exercise. You don't have to be perfect. It's not about being perfect. Well, you will never be perfect. That I can almost tell you for sure. But that's not the point. The point is keep showing up, keep doing it. Block those 15 minutes. Choose your topic. You just have to do that so that you can become a better professional wherever you are in your career. Again, this is valid for people starting or veterans. And you know, the good news about this is just there's only one rule to remember. Just one rule to remember. Repetition builds skill. Excuse me. Consistency builds confidence. Stick it in your monitor, repeat it to yourself, uh, put it around you. This is the compass, your magnetic north when things get noisy. You know, the imposter syndrome is showing up. Repeat this. You know, doubt. You start having doubts. Keep showing up. Keep telling this to yourself. Let consistency be your self-defense on this. Okay, I have a quick side note on this webinar. We're almost done, but I sort of got 2 minutes ago. I changed this slide because this is not something that would fit the narrative, but I still want to talk about this. And this is a quick side note. Please allow me to just bring something up that I think it's very important. Because everyone usually looks at when you start something, or it's like a moment of it's a moment of celebration. Ooh, I've started a course. I've started my career. I've started this. Or everybody looks when you you achieve something. So when something is done, when you get your certifications, or when you get that new job, because you've grown so much on the previous one, right? So we've all been there, but there's a stage that nobody talks about, and I'm going to talk about it right now. And that stage is the middle. So let's pause a little bit for a reality check, right? Just like with Ronaldo and Messi, most people talk about the beginning of the journey and the end of the journey. But the middle is the messy bit. This is where your confidence gets tested. It's where your enthusiasm starts to fade away. It's not exciting enough to put on LinkedIn. It's not interesting because you're just going through it. But this is the part that actually matters, and this is the part that actually will build you up. And that's actually why I brought this up. So why is this important? Because this is where people give up. So I've been talking about skill and repetition, and that consistency in repetition. The middle is the quitting moment. The middle is where nobody's clapping at you anymore. So you don't have your own motivation. That's why that consistency is so important. By the way, the middle is also where your calendar starts having a lot of distractions. You start feeling like there's no results. Um, it's that long, dry Sahara that doesn't seem to have any reward in sight, right? But here's the secret. It's not a desert. The middle is not a desert. It's a proving ground. It will put you to the test because very few people have the patience, the discipline, and the resilience to stay committed, um, especially if there's no applause, especially if there's no attention to them or to what they're doing, if there's no immediate results, no rewards, etc. Because and this is also something I want to bring about. The middle is you're not a beginner anymore, but you're not an expert yet. The learning curve flattens and progress seems not to exist, but it is there. It's just apparency. The apparency is that it doesn't exist, right? So mistakes will happen. You will make mistakes, and by the way, that's totally fine. Learn from them, dust off, and keep going. So it's kind of you're kind of left alone in the middle, right? That's how sometimes it feels. um, and this is when your commitment is tested. Okay, consistency is the key again, and repetition is the key. I told you a few slides ago, find a skill, schedule 15 minutes, and do it. It doesn't need to be much, but it's that repetition, that action that you recurrently do, consistently do every day, that will make you survive the middle. Okay, so we've spoken about repetition builds skill. We've spoken about consistency building confidence. We've spoken about the middle. And I want to close this with a challenge. And this is my challenge to you. Choose that cybersecurity skill. Practice for 30 days, a month. Track it. Make sure that you have it written down, what you're doing. And build on it. Reflect, grow, repeat. Share it online if you want. Again, remember that consistency is contagious. So when you show up, you inspire others. And trust me, we need more people in cybersecurity. So that's your challenge. And these are my final remarks that I want to leave you with. Cybersecurity isn't about brilliance. It's not about talent. It's about repetition. It's about consistency. Excuse me. We began with a quote. The quote was, repetition is the mother of skill. Consistency is the father of confidence. We've deconstructed that, stating exactly what you see in the screen right now. And it is my honest and profound wish to you that this helps you in your career. Because these are the building blocks of how to get there. It's small actions consistently repeated. Thank you very much, everybody. It was a pleasure to be here. Good luck with your cybersecurity career. And I think before we go, I'm just going to check if there's any questions. I don't see any questions. Right. So, all right. Thank you, everybody. I wish you. Oh, there's a question. So the question is the following: are there specific resources or methods you recommend for building a consistent learning routine in cybersecurity? Oh, that's $1 billion question. It's a good question. Thank you for the question. Um, you see, there might be specific resources. There might be specific methodologies. I'm thinking, for example, the Pomodoro approach of time. I have 25 minutes focus, 5 minutes break, and etc. But I want to step back from methodologies or resources, because it's the discipline. It's the I want to go back to basics. Really go back to basics. And again, we go back to that slide where I said choose a skill and schedule 15 minutes. If you're on the train, better. You sit down, you read something about penetration testing or red teaming. You're on the bus, and it's more than the resources and the methods. It's the repetition, it's the consistency. Now, once you have that, then methods and tools and resources can help you. But I believe that the process is more important than the additions that you can put there. I'm not sure if this is making sense to you. I hope I'm answering. I'm sure there are more resources. I can share them when this video is posted. But I think that the basic actions are way more important than resources or methodologies, because then you can adapt them to whatever methodologies you want, or you can use whatever resources or tools that you find interesting. But again, that's a step 2. Step 1 is the repetition and the consistency. Thank you very much for your question, Frank. Any other questions? Thank you. All right, so I will stop sharing. Nuran, I think you can stop the recording. Thank you very much, everybody. It was a pleasure.